We're talking with UNLV's acting president, Marta Meana. That's next on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstat, Cashman Equipment, and additional supporting sponsors.
Well, welcome. I'm Kip Portenberger, and thank you for joining us this week on Nevada Week. Well, Dr. Marta Meana was appointed acting president of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas a little more than a year ago. Prior to that appointment, Dr. Meana spent 20-plus years at UNLV, where she served as a renowned professor and scholar in psychology, advisor to the university president, and then dean of UNLV's Honors College. Well, since her appointment as acting president, UNLV has been identified as one of the highest-rated research universities and most diverse campuses in the country. We're sitting down with Marta today to get some insight on how maybe a short-term stint as an acting president can still drive long-term student success, growth, and sustainability. We are very honored to have on our show today Dr. Marta Meana, UNLV president. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
I mentioned it's been a little over a year, 14 months. What's day-to-day like for an acting president at UNLV?
Very busy. It's busy, it's exhilarating. You wake up every day and you say to yourself, how can I advance this university today? And there's many, many ways of doing that. So it's a very varied, intellectually challenging and incredibly gratifying position.
Has day-to-day changed from maybe your first couple days in the position to what you're doing now?
Obviously, you develop a higher level of mastery over all of the issues. When you come in, there are many issues that you are not familiar with. But that happens really fast. The learning curve is steep. And of course, having been at this university and in this city for as long as I have, I was fairly familiar to begin with some of the challenges and some of the opportunities.
And let's talk about that. Psychology professor, as I mentioned, then Honors College dean. You're managing budgets and things like that, but not at the scale of what you are doing as the acting president. How big is the learning curve then to move into that big role?
Well, the principles are the same, right? You basically, whether the budget is small or big, you're basically using strategic thinking about the priorities of the university and directing the funds in those areas.
How much of your job is on the strategic thinking side versus being out on campus and kind of doing more listening tours and things that you might envision more of a long-term president in doing?
I think all of it is strategic. I mean, when you're interacting with the community, when you're interacting with students, you're not just communicating your vision of where the university needs to go. You're also getting feedback from all of these constituents that in turn help you further develop your strategy. So I see it all together.
How about shouldering data? I mean, is it this type of thing where you're looking at enrollment data and kind of where retention is going on a daily, monthly basis?
I'm a big believer in data-driven decision-making. And so we really look at the numbers very closely, be they financial or enrollment or student success, to make sure not just that we are developing good programs, but that we can measure whether these programs are working and to what extent. So I'm all about the data.
Let's talk a little bit about enrollment. I mentioned that UNLV is one of the most diverse undergraduate universities in the nation. What really sets UNLV apart when you're looking at recruitment and you're looking then, of course, at retention of a student body that's that diverse?
I think it's an incredible opportunity for students and faculty to be in a very rich environment. So I think it's one of our biggest selling points. We get some of the best and brightest students in Nevada coming here. When I was at the Honors College, we started with very few of those students choosing UNLV, and that story has changed tremendously in a few years. So I think we're an R1 university. Who wouldn't want to go to an R1 university? So recruitment of great students is not hard.
And Honors College has increased threefold,
Yeah.
as I understand too. Let's talk about the best and the brightest then. That has been a challenge in our state. We've talked about brain drain for years prior to this, but to keep the best and brightest within our school, what is within our state, what is UNLV's role in something like that?
Well, UNLV has to communicate effectively all the incredible things that are going on at this university. When I started recruiting for the Honors College and trying to get those students to stay here instead of go out of state, I didn't make anything up. I just told them what we were already doing. And sometimes universities don't advertise themselves as well as they could in terms of their accomplishments. It happens nationally. And we have to get better and better at communicating to this community what, in fact, we're doing, which is pretty impressive.
And one of those things is the R1 status that you have as research. Let's just talk about that. For one thing, what is R1 rated status?
Well, R1 means that you are one of the top 3% universities in terms of research, which is incredible when you think that UNLV got there in a mere 62 years. UNLV and I share the same birthday, so I always know exactly how old the university is. And in a short 62 years, we achieved that designation, which is incredible. But our goal is bigger than that. We don't just want to be one of the top universities in research. We want to be one of the top universities in student success, and we want to be one of the top universities in community impact. So I have a much broader vision. We have a much broader vision of who we want to be. We, of course, are very proud of the R1 designation, but it's a journey. It means getting that designation just means we have to keep on trying harder.
And getting that designation doesn't mean you get to keep that designation.
No, it does not.
So when you're looking in the future here and you're looking at something like research, how do you expand and grow to make sure that you still are a designated R1 school?
Well, we continue to do what we're doing. Our research expenditures have gone up tremendously, and it's also part of that changing culture at UNLV where scholarship and research has become very central to everything that we do. 30 years ago, we might have been more of a teaching institution, and today we want to be all of it. We want to be a teaching institution, we want to be a research institution, and we want to be an institution that's integrated into a community who's proud of us and of which we're proud.
Let's go back to enrollment. Let's talk about underserved and underrepresented populations here. We talk about the achievement gap as one of the big priorities of the whole system of higher education for Nevada. But in underrepresented and underserved students, what is UNLV's role? How are you working maybe with the K-12 system to make sure that there's a pipeline for those students to access UNLV?
We've always gotten a large percentage of the K-12 kids at CCSD at UNLV. What we need to do, however, is we need to make sure that they stay in college and that they graduate. And so this fall we have an unprecedented initiative to support and mentor these students, 30% of which are first-generation students. And it's clear what we have to do, and that is that these students need a fair amount of support. Now, obviously, that takes resources, and we can only do what our resources allow us to do. But we are really focused right now on the support of those students who we know if we can get them into that second year, they're much more likely to succeed and to graduate.
And are you identifying that as the biggest gap then, is going from a freshman to sophomore year as an undergraduate?
Well, basically, if they don't stay until the second year, you've lost them. So obviously retention, what we call first year retention, that is that they make it to their second year, is a big part of our effort. But then, of course, making sure that they make it throughout the entire degree. And there are lots of things you can do to help that along. And we're very invested in doing that.
And I know one of the challenges is remediation. Within the entire system of higher education, we estimate that about 50% need some form of remediation as they enter that first year of college in English and math. What is something that UNLV is doing there to kind of get over that hump?
Well, we're doing something that I think the data will show is going to work a lot better, and that is we're getting away from remediation to co-requisites. So in kind of the old system, if you weren't college ready. We gave you courses at the college level for which you didn't get credit, and it just made students feel like they weren't quite advancing. What we're doing now is following a plan that's been so successful in so many other places, which is that what we used to call remediation, the support, happens concurrently with the college level course. And the data says that students are much more likely to stay in college with a co-requisite approach to those areas where they're not as strong than with a remediation approach.
Is that a relatively new program that's being implemented?
It will be fully implemented within a year, so we're starting it this year.
And we piloted this. Do we have any data?
We have piloted it, and it's obviously been piloted to a greater extent across the country in other schools.
We're talking about completion, we're talking about success. The funding formula, it comes up in this conversation too. Mm-hmm. The funding formula isn't relatively new. It was changed in 2013, but it went from per pupil for enrollment to completion. Mm-hmm. For state funding. How has that affected state funding for a university like UNLV?
We're doing well with the formula. We really are. And obviously, we should be judged by how many kids we graduate, not how many kids we enroll. I mean, the data shows that a little bit of college actually hurts you. You end up with debt and no degree. So I'm all for the formula being focused on completion because that's the only outcome, really, that at the end of the day matters.
Let's talk a little bit more about funding then. There is this kind of often maligned conversation about NorthSouth funding and that there might be a little bit of an imbalance there. Something like maybe the funding formula changing, is that balancing out funding NorthSouth, or do you see that there's an imbalance in where funding is?
The formula has definitely balanced things out. Now, you know, if there were historical inequities in the past, I can't really speak to those, but I would say that the way we're going now and where we are right now is a much more balanced situation.
Achievement gap, let's talk a little bit more about that. So gender gaps, especially in science and technology, engineering and math, also racial and ethnic gaps as well. We're trying to close those. Mm-hmm. What are some of the ways that UNLV is trying to find more equitable opportunities to kind of close those gaps?
Well, part of what you have to do with these groups of students who have not graduated at the same rate is you have to make them feel like they belong, like this is their school too. And that has to do with content in courses that speaks to their culture, to their gender. It has to do with creating opportunities for them to feel that they're part of the life of the university. So it's kind of a holistic way of reaching out to those students and speaking to them directly with both the instruction and the social life at the university.
You mentioned before mentorships is a big strategy that you're using. What kind of mentorships are we talking about? Are we talking about student to student or professor to student?
All sorts. I mean, we know for a fact, students tell us all the time that the people that have the most influence on their success are faculty. Faculty are extremely important. Mentors continue to be. But peer mentors are also really important. We had an incredible program in the Honors College, the Bennett Honors Mentor program, which was funded by a very generous donor, where we paired first-year students with senior students who could show the first-year students through the ropes, right? And so now we're trying to scale this out and do that kind of peer-to-peer mentoring, you know, senior peer to junior peer mentoring, because students will help each other in ways that we won't even think about as faculty. So I think a combination of both is ideal.
And with mentorship or any type of strategy you're working on, what's the community's role? We have very robust community organization, nonprofit organizations in this state and in Las Vegas. What's their role in kind of helping students?
Oh, a very important one. First of all, the internships that we are so grateful to have across this community are incredible mentorship opportunities, professional development. The community has also been very generous in coming in and doing workshops with our students and seminars to talk about the workplace, because one thing is to take a course and to read about theory, and another thing is to hear from employers themselves about the kinds of skills that you may not find in a book, but are going to end up being really important in the workplace.
Labor force is changing. We are seeing an increased demand in middle skills or career and technical education jobs, which don't necessarily need a four-year degree, but you need some form of credential for that. Is UNLV able to fill some of the gaps there and provide training and education programs that might not get to the four-year degree, but yet are filling that gap?
Well, I think that the community colleges are central to that particular mission of technical education. Although we can be a part of that story, I think the mission of the university is the wider, broader kind of university education. So we can certainly be part of that story, but I think the community colleges are really ramping up lately and doing a great job at exactly those kinds of technical trades.
What our biggest economic driver is still gaming and tourism. How does UNLV then work with some of our bigger corporations in town to make sure that the students that are coming out of UNLV are reaching the labor market that they need?
We have lots of relationships with the gaming industry, and our hospitality college is world-renowned, nationally renowned, and I think a real meeting place for the industry. So there's a college where you really see this interchange between industry and our students, and that dialogue keeps on happening because, as you said, the industry is changing. And so we have to have an open channel of communication with industry so that we make sure that we're training our students to do what they need them to do.
When we're talking about strategy and we're looking at maybe industries outside of gaming and tourism that are developing, are there directions that you see UNLV going maybe in the next 20, 25 years?
Well, we're very invested right now in our whole engineering and healthcare. So obviously with the new med school, with an engineering building that we're going to be breaking ground on soon, these are two of the areas in which we see the biggest growth in job opportunities in the Valley. So the Governor's Office of Economic Development puts out, the positions that we're going to need most in the next 10 years, and healthcare and engineering pretty much cover it. So we have a big push to expand both our education in those two areas as well as our workforce development.
Let's talk about the medical school then. We have a $125 million state bond to now build the building, or are we still in kind of a fundraising stage here of this?
We're always in a fundraising stage, Kip. We're a university. No, we're super excited about the med school. We just admitted our third class of 60 students, so we have a very exciting, we had over 2,000 applications. So the quality of the students is incredible. We have a great innovative program. So we have a med school that's doing terrific. All the talk about the building is because we don't have the space to grow. And so in the building we're in, we're limited to entering classes of 60 students. All the talk about a new building is because we would like to increase the number of healthcare providers in the Valley and to increase the size of these entering classes. So we are open to any plan that helps us get there faster. But we are moving ahead with plans for that building and are quite excited.
Now, if you are to double that money and get another $125 million, would you expand from the 120 students that it would currently house to 240?
I would have to let the data drive that decision in terms of need, because you have to make sure also that you're not putting out more graduates than the region can absorb. So I would have to go to the data for that. But I certainly think we could expand to over 120, yes. Maybe 180, something like that.
Which was the original number, correct?
Original.
Yep. Yeah. One of your visions is UNLV being a community hub, a real kind of center of what is going on in this community. Can you give us some examples of maybe what is going on at the university now that kind of captures that vision you have?
So I'll give you one example. First of all, I want to say that to me it's absolutely central that the university be fully integrated into the community, and that the community really embrace the university as an integral part of it. I think together we can solve a lot of problems. So one of the areas in which of late we have kind of put together a coalition with the county and the university and other parties is to look at the issue of homelessness. So that's an example, for example, of an issue that we have with our College of Urban Affairs. We have expertise in that area. There's a community need. We can come together and bring all the skills and talent and know-how that both the city and the county and the university have together to really address issues as crucial as that.
Another big area of UNLV is, of course, policy research and driving a lot of the policy. How do you see potentially that growing? Are there other sector areas maybe for policy growth at the university?
Well, we've been very involved in policy with Brookings Mountain West and the Lindsay Institute and the new MGM Policy Institute. Basically, an area that we are really focused on is the middle class, how to make the middle class succeed. And I think we're seeing it in this election season, how important that topic is. So a lot of issues around mobility, social mobility and economic mobility are important to us.
Right. Another big part of community, of course, is sports and athletics. We look back maybe 25 years from now, and there wasn't a lot of other real estate as far as for sports fans to follow here. The landscape's changing considerably. How does UNLV Athletics remain top of mind to our local sports fans?
Well, I think we're part of the picture. You know, there are lots of cities that have pro sports and also very vibrant college athletics. So I think we lift each other up. I also think that there we have another incredible opportunity for economic development. We've become a sports hub, and we can become a leader in terms of sports medicine, sports innovations, broadcasting innovations related to sports. So I see that, and there's already a group of us working on it. I see that as a very fertile area for economic development for our city that brings the community together with the research that we do in those areas.
Just looking over the last 14 months that you've had here, we've talked about R1 status, we've talked about being one of the most diverse colleges in the U.S. What are some of the high points for you?
The high points, there were many of them. R1 had to be one, and although I don't take any personal credit for that happening on my watch, I do take credit for being part of the 22 years that led up to that event in terms of research productivity. Homecoming, we had the most astounding homecoming last fall. I had never seen a campus, our campus, that full and that excited at homecoming. We had this parade with the carts. It was great. So whenever I see our university come together and get excited that way, is incredibly exciting. And then of course the cannon. You can't forget that. We won the cannon.
You won the cannon. Correct. Correct. Let's talk about your future at UNLV. So I know when you first were appointed the role publicly, you said this wasn't something that you wanted to do long term, and you couldn't at that time. Nevada State of Higher Education had a restriction on appointed interim presidents being involved as a candidate. That has now changed. It changed in February, so there is an opening there. Can you kind of update us on what your plans are?
I haven't made a final decision. There is a good possibility that I will apply. I was honored that exception was made for me because it was, I think, a demonstration of trust and confidence in the job that I had been doing. And it was a much appreciated move. And over the next few weeks, we'll see.
acting presidents or maybe systems of higher education outside of our state, is this a common policy that we have where acting presidents are typically not candidates for long-term positions?
It varies from institution to institution. Some people don't make a distinction between interim and acting, so I think you'd find that that's different in different places.
In your position now that you've got 14 months under your belt here, how important is it to actually be in the role and kind of experience what you've experienced when you're looking at more of a long-term position here?
Well, it's very important because you have, as I said, a sense of mastery and also a sense of what really needs to be done. And when I took this job, acting or not, I always said that I would conduct myself as if I were permanent. Because that's, to me, the only thing to do. I did not want to be a seat warmer, and I haven't been a seat warmer because we can't afford seat warmers. We've got too much to do. Too many great things are happening, and you have to act, and you have to make decisions, and that's what I have done.
And I think we look forward to what the future holds for UNLV. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
We
Kip.
really appreciate it. And thank you, as always, for joining our discussion on Nevada Week. And we're going to continue this discussion on our Nevada Week Extras, so please visit our website to view this continuing conversation, or watch this episode again, or access resources that are discussed on the show. Also, if you have a topic or issue that you'd like us to explore in a future Nevada Week, we'd always love to hear from you. So please find us on social media or email us at nevadaweek@vegaspbs.org. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next Nevada Week.